afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start my sincere thanking each one of you for coming and spending your valuable time with us at the Marketing Conclave, which is presented by IMAI and WebEngage in collaboration with our innovation partner Zapads. Your host for the day will be me, Reni Shah. We are overjoyed to have you here, and we anticipate a fascinating day of thought provoking conversation that, in our opinion, will be insightful and enriching. Let me begin by introducing you to IMAI, that is Internet and Mobile Association of India, and the Marketing Conclave. The Internet and Mobile Association of India is a non-profit industry that represents the entire spectrum of India digital services business. IMAI have over 450 plus Indian and multinational firms as member of a sector specific committee. If you have any doubts or question about IMI, please reach out to our IMI membership team present here. As we all know that we are riding on the success of 17th edition of the Marketing Conclave, we proudly call the show on the 18th Marcon, which with the theme of foreseeing the unforeseen. Without wasting any time, let me introduce you to our renowned thought leaders who will be conducting this workshop. Please note that there is a barcode in front of you on the table requesting you all to scan the code and fill out the form. Upon confirmation, you will be provided with the certificate of completion for attending the Google Cloud workshop along with a special giveaway. Our renowned leaders will be Dr. Virginia Sharma, India Marketing Head, and Mr. Kunal Mathur, Head of Data and AI Sales from Google Cloud. Make sure you scan the QR code on the table and give a huge round of applause for the speakers. May I request you all to please join.
Hey, good afternoon. All right. So I know a lot of you have a lot of expectations for this session. So I wanted to give you a context about why we wanted to do this particular session. Some of you may know my background is a mix of marketing and tech. And I find that sometimes we don't know enough about tech, and tech folks don't know enough about marketing, and everything gets left on the floor, right? So the customer is kind of the last thing. So what's a problem statement that I think we have, where I'd like you to help me, make sure that Kunal is giving you the content that you need, is the following problem statement, right? And is that over the last few years, I think many of us have been using, how many of you all have been using cohorts programmatically? So DV360 or any other DSP using cohorts that are using third-party data, using cookies. How many of you all use cookie-based data to target? And how many of you all have actually used most of your data sits outside and your targeting data sits outside? How many of you all use third parties to do campaigns, using third-party data for campaigns versus your own data? Okay, how many of you are using first-party data to do your own campaigns? Okay, so what we're discovering is that number one is that if you're using third-party data, this is becoming increasingly problematic, right? So with the sunsetting of cookies that is imminent, we've already seen the trends in the US, because it's a more iOS-based market, that ever since they introduced the privacy sort of ask on the apps, cost of acquisition has gone up like 10x in the US for the same campaigns, because if you no longer have those signals coming from the user, about only 18% so people actually opted in once Apple introduced their privacy opt-in, right? Now imagine that happening in an Android world, right? And I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but our cost of acquisition is going to go up dramatically once we actually see this happen. So put aside everything else, we cannot afford to have 10x more budgets year on year for the same campaigns. So we have to get ahead of it. How do we get ahead of it is that we have to optimize how we use our first-party data. Right? Now in India, our first-party data looks more like second-party data. It's actually ours, but it sits somewhere else at a vendor. Your email automation is somewhere, your SMS vendor is somewhere else, but it's your money, right? You're actually spending every year on having this agency or third party manage this. Then you have to kind of work with them to make sure that they're able to tap into and maximize the use of what I call second-party data, right? Which is your data that sits somewhere else. Either you bring it in-house, or you start working with them to make sure that they're optimizing the way they use it. So what I actually asked Kunal to do, Kunal is really a rocket scientist when it comes to data analytics. He's gracious enough. He spends a lot of time in the deep technical worlds of AI, ML, analytics. But I thought that having him engage with a marketing and agency, audience will not only allow him to hear your questions, but also share with you how you can approach this issue of using your first-party data if you so choose. But also I asked him to make sure that you really focuses on how do you get started. So he's not going to go in the, like this would take a half-day workshop if you really wanted to get into it. If you are interested in a more detailed workshop for your organization, obviously that can be arranged. So this is really like a quick teaser of what you really can start looking for. Is that a good brief for Kunal? I just wanted to check because I don't want to misrepresent the interest of this audience because I really asked him to do this with certain assumptions in mind. Any other questions top of mind for you as it relates to your first-party data or second-party data? Okay, I got it right. Wow, look at that. All right, over to you, Kunal. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you for handling me with kid gloves. First time talking to marketeers, so please excuse me if I get some of the jargons wrong or some of your concepts wrong. But the idea was, like Virginia mentioned, how do I get my data to help me do my function better, right? Virginia spoke about what's happening in the world, right? Like last 4 years have been a sea of change for every one of us, right? I mean, right from our personal lives being rocked by the pandemic to digital suddenly becoming like the only channel of distribution for almost 2 years. And then, getting back to the real world, tons of changes. And that's also changing consumer behavior dramatically, right? Consumer behavior is changing both from a regulatory standpoint because of the way they are demanding change from a privacy perspective. People are much more reluctant to give away their data. There used to be apps about 5 years back would just guzzle everything on your phone. I don't think so any app which asks like a ton of permissions can get through the Play stores anymore, right? And then governments are also waking up around this. Like GDPR is probably the first and the most formative law around privacy that we've seen, and I'm sure this are going to come to other countries as well. Everyone's thinking about this. And from a technology perspective, vendors are also thinking, because if you are a large technology provider, your brand stands for trust. And if you break that trust, it's going to be very difficult to kind of gain that customer back. And large OEMs are also thinking that manner. And Apple has been the lead on that, right, with the ability to stop or ask for consent from the customer to be able to track him, right? And we've all seen what those results are. In the US, like about 85% of folks, don't give their consent to be tracked across apps, right? So a large amount of identifiers, cookies, are just going to go away. We're not going to be able to do retargeting based on some of those techniques, right? So we're going to be able, we'll have to do a lot more with a lot less data that the platforms provide you right now. All of that will go away. So unless you have your own first-party data, this is going to be extremely expensive to do. We keep doing these surveys because it kind of allows us to learn the trends. And this is what we found, right? 85% of digital marketing professionals say cookie loss and measurement in that cookie loss world are two of the three topmost priorities, right? So at Google, we want to kind of make sure that we raise the bar for privacy and we help marketers do more with less. So how do you do more with less? We believe there are just three main pillars to do this. The first one is make sure your measurement is future-proof. Your measurement mechanisms are based on a cookieless world right now. It's not there right now. It will come soon. Might as well adopt it faster. The third one is make sure that your audiences are durable. They're based on your own intelligence, right? Not just based on some programmatic platform that is giving you some algorithm-based audiences. And then you automate the actions on that, right? Both of these pillars are like a workshop in its own, and I am not fully equipped to have conversations on those two pillars. So I'm going to limit myself to data, which is what I do for a living and I love. How do you use your first-party data, right? So three things to survive in a cookieless world. Paramount is first-party data. And what we've seen is any marketer who uses first-party data to drive their campaigns, to drive their initiatives, see at least a 2x uplift in revenue and 1.5x uplift in their efficiency in terms of how much that dollar goes to kind of get them the ROI. So we worked with BCG to kind of come up with like a 5-step process in terms of making sure that you can take advantage of your first party data. So the first is like make sure your customer objectives are aligned. Get the customer's consent to get that data in the first place. Make sure the tech is aligned, and that's where I'm going to spend most of my time today. And then the last two is iterate, learn from those iterations, and then refine your measurements with each of those iterations. The last two are going to be like very difficult for me to cover in the timelines today, so I'm going to do the first three itself. So if you look at just simply collecting data, doesn't make sense. You can guzzle, like I said, right? 5 years back, apps were just guzzling data. You could have a ton of data, but that data in itself is of no use, right? You have to have a coordinated plan across the enterprise of what is it that you want to achieve, right? Unless you have that just guzzling data, you're just going to sit on a ton of data which you don't know what to do with because you're uncoordinated within your own enterprise, right? So it's extremely important that across the entire value chain of your enterprise, you have a coordinated plan around this data that you're going to collect. What are you going to do with it, right? Look at this example, right? The CPG company, you want to make sure that every one of these line of businesses are aligned to that data so that you know the data that you're collecting, where in which line of business is going to be used. Right? A marketer may be only wanting to know the segments that he wants to market to. A omni-channel head would want to know where is he going to maximize his revenue, right? R&D wants to know what's the next thing that they should work on, right? Trend spotting, right? Ops and logistics is how do I get my customer something faster? So it's a holistic data plan. It is just not a marketeer's data plan. Because you're collecting this data, you're going to spend an insane amount of energy and time to be able to convince the customer to give you that data. You might as well get the relevant data and not just any data, right? So make sure you have a coordinated plan across the enterprise to kind of do that. Good example would be, let's say you want to drive loyalty. Make sure your loyalty program then becomes the source of storing this data, right? All of that data. And using that data, then you drive other things beyond, right? Trend spotting, let's say uplifts you want to drive on revenue, you send out campaigns through that for promo codes. So make sure that it is aligned to the business objectives and your marketing objectives. Just don't look at it from a marketeer's perspective. So how do you get the customer to give you consent? This is like an art, less a science. So make sure you give some value back to the customer to get that consent, right? You can offer convenience, right? You want to know when your shipment's arriving, give me your email address, give me your WhatsApp, this thing. You want to get a promo on your or 10% discount on your next purchase, sign up for my loyalty program, right? And hence give me so much data. You want to get a new deal, you can give me your email address, could be a phone identifier, something like that. So unless you're providing some value back to the customer, it's going to be very difficult to kind of get this data from him. This is the most important and the closest to my heart because I do this day in and day out. Make sure your technology platforms are not siloed, they're not fragmented. Make sure that the marketing data talks to your enterprise data. Bring it onto a single platform, right? Unless they're not integrated and you can't see it as one view, you'd be working on siloed data and then you'd be passing on wrong signals, right? So bring all your data together and then just concentrate on two things, connections and actionability. Connections, that means how do I trace this back through my entire enterprise? How do I make sure that I have connections between all of the various integration points a marketer may have as well as the enterprise may have, right? How does my market data talk to my sales system? How does my sales system talk to my logistics system, right? So make sure that connections happen and you bring all the data together and then make sure that you can action those items, right? If that data is just collected, like I said, and you don't action it, you don't make it usable, you don't make it easier for the marketer to go and action and run a campaign against it, It's all useless. I'll show you a quick few demos in terms of what do I mean by actionability. So the Google Cloud Platform behind our Google Marketing Platform can act as this layer of bringing all of this data together, right? You can bring in your marketing data, you can bring in your digital commerce data, you can bring in your R&D data, and these are some of the use cases I've just listed that can be enabled using that, right? You could do smart consumer segmentation, right? You could do customer lifetime value. And some of this can't be done just based on Google Analytics or your web analytics data. This needs to be done based on your transactional data that you are generating off your own systems. So the idea is to build a full consumer profile, right? What we've seen is companies, even at very large scale, the companies which are able to build a 1:1 sort of a relationship do extremely well, right? And to be able to build that 1:1 sort of a relationship, you need to know your customer across, right? So bringing all of this data and creating a holistic profile and that data platform is super important, right? So these are some of the use cases once you've built that profile that you can enable, right? You can do predictive analytics, you can do mixed media modeling, you can do audience segmentations for your programmatic campaigns, right? You can do better recommendations to your customers. You can do better, brand meters, right? What's the sentiment around your brand? And this is how the technology comes together. I'm not going to go into details of it, but essentially these are a bunch of Google Marketing Cloud, Marketing Platform properties which can very easily integrate into the Google Cloud Platform and then help you build that customer data platform, right, for that one single view of your customer, and then a bunch of tools to help you activate those customers. And I'll quickly show you that as well. Some of the use cases, so once you've built this, right, once you have all your first party data in one place, once you've been able to kind of integrate this across your enterprise, what are some of the use cases that you can kind of support, right? Let's look at awareness. You can do customer lifetime modeling, you can do audience segmentation, right? I'm going to show you some of these in a quick demo. You can do predictions, you can do affinity cohorts, you can do how is the customer behaving within your app, and if that can drive some insights, right? So the possibilities are endless, but it starts with you bringing it all together. And let me just quickly show you what I mean, and then we can get into some questions. So this is a simple model that we've built. Let me refresh this. So we've brought all of our first party data into one place, and we've matched it with the data that we've been able to collect through web analytics and mobile analytics. And then we've run machine learning models on top of that to build a few models for certain use cases. I'll just quickly give you a demo of what I meant. So let's look at all our customers from a particular state. So let's look at New York, right? Let me see, check audience size. We've got 4,709 customers who've transacted from the state of New York. Now, let me see if I can I want to refine this further. Let me see so I've run a machine learning model to predict my customer lifetime value for the set of customers that I've already had. Let me see, I want to target customers who can give me $50 to $100. Let me see. Okay, most of them fall in that category, and I want to run a campaign, let's say, for folks who've bought I don't know, jeans, let's see. Oh, we've got 1,530 customers from whom we have data which kind of fills these three filters. Let me take that audience and sort of do a programmatic push to Google Ads customer match, back to TV 360 to target these customers. So this is what, a very quick and dirty demo. Obviously, this is very unrefined, but essentially, had I not had my first-party data, I wouldn't have the first filter. Had I not had my machine learning models, my own machine learning models, I wouldn't be able to do my predictive CLV, right? And then I wouldn't be able to form this segment on my own and send it back to Google. I'd just have to rely on whatever the platform's offering me, right? Another good use case could be, look at this, right? So we've built this. Let me just go back. So we've built this cohort analysis based on the first-party data and, again, a bunch of Google Analytics data. So if you see where are my customers coming from, this is primarily data which is gotten picked up from Google Analytics. What are my top 5 brands? What are my top 5 categories? What are my top spenders? Who are my best sellers? This is a marketplace. All of this data is my first-party data. It comes from my transactional system. Google doesn't have any access to these. Unless I bring all of this data onto one dashboard, I won't be able to do the next use case that I'm going to show. So let's say Ray-Ban is in my top 5 brands list, right? And I want to kind of run a campaign around this and bring him ahead. So let's look at Ray-Ban as a brand in itself. Okay, so I get the categories, I get the total order, what's the average order on this. All of this is sales data, but it's extremely useful data to a marketer, right? Generally, this lies siloed into a sales function. It goes to sales ops. It's not really shared with marketers, but the amount that you can work with if you had access to this data is phenomenal. So what we've done is we've run affinity analysis on this data for Ray-Ban. So if you look at the affinity score, this comes off an ML model, and then I can action from here, any campaign that I want. This is my web analytics data, right? Like for example, let me go back. So let's say the bestseller. I want to use my bestseller and start an email brand promotion cohort, right? All of this is just based on first-party data. So these are some quick demos that we wanted to kind of show to make sure that you get what we're trying to put there in terms of the importance of first-party data. So my closing comments around this before I kind of ask you questions, because we are also trying to validate in terms of where we are as a country in terms of using first-party data. My closing comments would be cookies, identifiers are going to go away. It's an eventuality which we have to deal with. We're going to be able to need to be doing much more with much less that the platforms provide. To be able to do that, we need to be able to collect first-party data, process it, and then action it. And technology is going to play a big role in that, right? So these are 3 things I'd kind of put as closing comments, and then I'll open it up to folks to ask questions. One of the questions that is both of us, Virginia and I, had was, where are you in your journey of this first-party data? Do you use it in this manner, or is it used much less in terms of a few very defined use cases? And do you even, as marketers, have access to some of this data which is lying around in other parts of your organization? So some of the questions that we wanted to kind of get answers to. Hey, this was supposed to be a workshop, so it's supposed to be interactive, not a 1:many.
First, any questions about the presentation itself? Any clarification about any concepts that were shared? Everybody's clear? Any, so this is our question to you all, since this is our test, which is, what gets in the way for an organization, doesn't have to be your organization, what do you think gets in the way to be able to get like transactional data or getting data from other parts of the organization into the marketing fold for us to do campaigns? Like what are the key like objections you hear internally, if any?
So yes, I would like to point out what Kunal said about having the data together and not in fragments, not siloed, because having it together makes it easier for all teams to access and have visibility. So the example that you showed, that actually kind of blew my mind because everybody, different teams across the organization. So I come from a product team, so a product company. So I'm in marketing. So when the product gets some data, sales gets that data. Usually marketing is the last, organization, last team who gets that data. But like you pointed out, having access to data like that really revolutionizes everything. Because as a marketer, someone who is doing marketing automations in email or someone in social media, I can utilize the data in such a nice way and actually generate some leads and actually get some results. So that answering your question, sometimes within a team it gets tricky to get access to data, and that is something that can be changed with technology like this, having everything in one platform and not relying on 5, 6 different platforms to accumulate data.
That's great. Yeah. So anybody had any success on extracting sort of non-campaign data from other parts of the business, from logistics or from the sales team, or I think there was a few people on this table that have been working with first-party data. Would you be open to sharing how you got that data for the others in the room? Actually, I'll keep the mic, yeah.
The thing is that even when you use like your SEA or your Google Ads, cloud in general allows you to have that synchronization. So when we get first party data, it could be any department of a particular company, but it kind of gets synchronized because the same analytics, or even if you're using Google Analytics, because it's synced in well, all the teams could get access to the same kind of data. So yes, it does make things a bit easier. And then you also kind of counter the same problem, which is that the marketing team could get the data at the last. But then in such a platform or on such a platform, it gets easier for all of us to get access at the same time. At the same time, you would also additionally get the same analysis. So you would know if the sales team is on the right track, your marketing team is on the right track. So yes, it does help, and the first party data problem is also kind of taken care of.
Okay, so you're saying because the marketing engine is because it's on Google Analytics and ads, it's easier for you to get the data from the
Correct.
business to run the campaigns, right? Anybody using the affinity? So just to give you a direct example, before first-party data, we were using a lot of the ready-made cohorts or the affinity cohorts that DV360 serves up. I think there's, 56 or about 60 cohorts or so that are there. But we're finding as time passed, those become less and less effective because everybody was using the same cohorts. Our competitors were using the same cohorts, et cetera. So there's no differentiation on my campaign and the next person because it's almost public data for anybody that uses Google Ads. So what we found is even layering like one simple layer of our own data, like this propensity kind of, this affinity model, especially like the lifetime value or any of these filters, at least created like some differentiation from everyone else that's targeting the same audience. So instead of targeting the 4,500, targeting the 1,500, I mean, we saw that maybe 2 years ago, basic cohorts worked, but now it's like not as effective because everybody's found those cohorts basically. Anyone else have had any experience or bad experience trying to get first-party data? Go ahead. Oh, and then we can go there. Yeah.
Not a bad experience, just a
Okay.
question. And
Yeah.
this pertains to your earlier question. What is the biggest challenge we face as
Yeah.
within the organization? So the collation happens, the data collection and collation's happening, the campaignification's happening, great. The biggest challenge I find internally is getting the right insights. And how can Google, or if you have a case study to kind of show us, since it's a master class, how can we glean those insights? And that's something that you were also referring to. That is our biggest challenge, that this is what's going to work, or this is the hidden trend. That is
Yeah.
the
That's
gap, so
interesting.
that we can plan a campaignification.
So
Yeah.
you saw those 5 things that Google and BCG have kind of put together to build a first-party plan. The fourth and the fifth, which I very conveniently left out for today, was test, learn, iterate, learn, and the other was measurement, right? And they sort of answer your questions in terms of the insights are just not going to appear. Like the problem with a lot of these things is if someone who is forward-looking and he also implements this, sometimes business loses the patience for the results to come off such initiatives. I think somewhere that sponsorship within your organization is extremely important because you'd have to iterate to get those insights. You can't expect that because I've got all the data in and I've started doing this, that I'll have the insights like overnight, right? And if a vendor like us who's external to your organization starts giving you insights, it'll be like what she's mentioned, right? It will not be a competitive advantage. We'll make it available to everyone, right? So those insights would be very specific to your business and you'd be the most important person to kind of understand and action them. And they'll only come through iteration, testing. Take one.
Craft some case studies. Just
sure.
sample case studies
So,
and share
yeah,
with
I think
marketeers
let me
how
give-
to test, learn.
Sure.
Just how it's done. We can go to businesses with that.
So I'll give you one case study from the last 4 months of a campaign that I've recently done on our Google Workspace product. So we have a product, Google Workspace. It has, Gmail, Drive, et cetera. And we ran a campaign that was on largely paid media. So we used all the different types of paid media. We used, YouTube, we used DV360, we used a bunch of others as well, like Twitter, everything else. I don't remember what we did. But what we discovered was that, and we were trying to measure the consideration lift for Workspace amongst the audience. But one layer of it was not really telling us whether we got it. Then we married the transactional data through this to look at Workspace users and non-Workspace users. So when you're targeting someone on LinkedIn, you don't know on a LinkedIn targeting, and LinkedIn doesn't know if someone's already using your product or not, right? Because Workspace is a SaaS product, people renew every year, right? That comes from the transactional data. So what we actually did is we were able to actually marry the transactional data of who actually buys Workspace, who doesn't buy Workspace. And then we started seeing different trends of how did people react to the campaign that already use the product, and how do they react when they don't use a product. And there was a bunch of insights that came out of that are actually evolving on product like feedback, because that also went back to say, hey, people use this, but they use, Zoom for something else, so on and so forth. So there's ways that you can actually give feedback about because Workspace has like 10 modules, right? There's Meet, but there's Gmail, and there's Drives, there's Photo, there's lots of different features, right? So I think that if you really want that data to come back and give insights, you have to first figure out who are the people in the organization that actually want those insights. Will product do something different with Google Workspace if I tell them that, hey, nobody's using Drive, right? Or everybody's using Google Drive and nobody's using Google Meet, for example, right? That's not the case, but that's just an example. If there's no one on the other side that's listening, actually, I find that it's more frustrating actually finding that insight, because now you know something that needs to be fixed, but there's no one on the receiving end that wants to make the changes. So there's a little bit of a culture thing as well. So I think that it goes both hands, which is if you collect that insight and God forbid you get an insight that requires changing the product, do you have anyone that will sponsor that change or not? In our case, Workspace is a relatively tight team. They're easy to get to, but I'm not sure I could say that about every single product team, right? Because their product is the best product and it's the perfect product. How will you change it, right? So that's just an example of insights that go beyond. Now, next year, for example, when we're doing the same campaign, we're doing a separate campaign for Workspace users and non-Workspace users, because we discovered their messaging and what they care about is different. So it evolved the campaign creative, as well as evolving, hopefully by next year, the product feedback is also kind of taken. I don't know if that's relevant in your industry, but that's one example. There's a few others like that as well. Cool. Any other questions or thoughts? Yep, the back over there. And I think you had a question as well, right? So come to you.
Yeah, hi. My question is regarding the targeting. So the gentleman showed us a demo, and in that the recommendation was to do something on Google Ads. Now I manage omni-channel, so it's not just Google Ads, it's website, chatbot, etc., etc. How does that pan out? As in, do we need connectors out of this Google Cloud thing, or do I have to export data out of it and then manually feed it in?
So most of the large programmatic platforms would provide an API. As long as there is an API to kind of integrate, you can integrate this. My salary still comes from Google, so I had to show Google Ads. But essentially, you can put in anything. The activation channel can be yours for the choosing.
So what if it's the website? So I
yeah,
want
so
to actually.
you've let's say cart abandonment, and you've integrated WebEngage or CleverTap, right? To do that, and you want to kind of make sure that this cohort that doesn't happen, and you kind of do that earlier in the journey. You can take that information and feed it back to any one of those platforms. So doesn't matter what's the activation channel.
Got your point. Ma'am, your question also was, have we done something like this? But since I don't manage Google Ads, I do it on website. So I did something which was with funnels. So there's a flow, and there are 6 steps, and people are dropping off on the 3rd step. So on the 3rd step, I did a right click in Google Analytics, and I let that data flow into a segment. And I started targeting them through Google Ads. I ran that for a short period of time, but I don't manage paid, so it's not actually my purview. I just handed it over to the paid people, and that's still running. So that's my experience with.
I love that example because it's so focused.
Yeah.
And I think people overthink
Yeah, I can
using
tell you what it
analytics.
was also. It's basically a form you're filling, and people were dropping off on the Aadhaar card field.
Yeah.
They just dropped there. So then we started targeting them, saying it's safe, it's this, it's that, it's secure. Don't worry, we're a big brand.
I love that. That's a great example. And simple, right? A lot of people think analytics has to be this grand transformation. And, I don't know about all of you, but our budgets are not going up next year for marketing. And so we are going to have to optimize with the campaigns we have and get more from the campaigns we have. Now, our inquiry funnel is quite high. Like, we get a lot of inquiries through the website and through the campaigns we have. And so now we've actually set OKRs for next year that are much more lower funnel, right? At the conversion point at step 3 to 4. Now, how do you actually address that? You can't run a campaign just like that without data. You actually have to target them with a very specific conversion. And so we're obviously using SLAs, but one other example is like even with our telesales engine, who typically has this, we're actually trying to see whether this data can also be served up, not necessarily in paid media, but actually try and give this data from the telesales team also has automated emails sent out from SalesLoft. I don't know what you all use. We use SalesLoft, where we push out these sort of emails. So this can actually be really good from a telesales engine perspective as well, which is these are the people that are falling off at this level. Let's give them an offer at that particular point. So that activation doesn't have to be a paid media campaign. It can actually be a sales campaign or a telesales campaign or a telemarketing campaign as well. Other feedback or thought? We have a couple of more minutes. What would you like to see in a follow-up workshop so we know what is expected? It is always good for my team to actually hear directly because they don't believe me when I tell them. So better that you tell them. So, yeah.
Probably like an integration of all the platforms that you'll have. Yeah. So probably like an integration of all the platforms that you'll currently have, and how can we optimize using each of them in a way that the overall output is kind of a better one.
So all the platforms across just Google or
Yes,
within all the
across
systems?
Google, and also if we have like we're using something else to, let's say for the API thing, but we want to integrate it with Google, then also what should be the route, or how can we have a better optimization plan?
Better optimization.
That's great feedback. I think at least the Google part is easy to do, kind of show.
Yeah.
You can show
APIs are the ones that you had listed over there, so we can maybe do a demo showing an API integration with a third party. Great. Any other use cases that you have that are emerging with your first party data? Obviously, it's a secret sauce. You've been waiting for a while. Let me personally give you the mic because it's not coming your way.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So my name is Amaya. I'm from Jio. I head the marketing for Jio Cinema and Jio TV. So when it was a really amazing product that you guys are building out there. And now that we know Google is also an ocean, Jio is also emerging ocean now. We, with 450 million users, and there are pool of applications there. The kind of use cases that we have here is something that somebody is shopping on JioMart with and bulking up with cold drinks and chips. I'm sure that he's going to preparing himself for the FIFA finale, and that is where I'm going to push him the FIFA content from Jio Cinema's side. Vis-a-vis, if he is watching something on a Lakme Fashion Week on Jio TV, Ajio is going to pick that particular user and going to pitch kind of a fashion stylist and the new things which are working out in the fashion industry. And that is how the Jio is as of now working with respect to all the applications under Jio, and creating one user for one Geo, and all the applications inside Geo are using that particular data on the first hand to get their things sold to each and every users there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that use case, actually. I previously worked for GeoSavin when Gulshan had come in to start building the GeoAds platform. It's very interesting, right? Because if you're able to think through as a marketer what kind of audiences and sister business units would be interesting for your product, right? So what we were looking at is, I was part of the music OTT, GeoSavin, which has data on genres of the kind of music you listen to. And Agio is a retail platform, and it's on fashion, right? And if you're able to sort of read data of certain cohorts that are, let's say, hip-hop, or they like a particular type of genre, or let's say they're listening to a lot of like Diwali or festive or religious music, you can really think about, a product development around like a fashion line that is more particularly festive, a festive shopping sale. But all these use cases, actually, what I really found fascinating was about a lot of inter-business unit collaboration. To talk about, before you get to data, is like, why would I be interested in this data? Like, the English behind the math is very, very important, right? Because like someone has to think about like people who actually are getting ready for festive, listening to festive music, spend 45 minutes getting dressed, listening to this music, could be good targets for accessories for festive, right? Or so on and so forth. But you have to, as marketers, this is where the marketing comes in, is that you have to actually work through and say, this could be interesting to that. Now, predictions and some of the models can give you some of that insight. But I think the fun of being a marketer is to actually have hypotheses going in. Like, I think these people might be interested in, people who are interested in this music might be interested, and let the hypothesis be tested by the models. Not necessarily that the answer is given to you by data analytics, but it's more validated by the analytics. I don't know, do you have a
I
point of view on
agree.
that?
If data just itself could give you answers, I wouldn't have to do any sales. I wouldn't have to do this pitch. You guys would have already done this. So
Great. Any last comments or questions? Yeah.
Yes, I would like to say that as a follow-up, like you asked, what would we like to see? We definitely would love some use cases, like two of us mentioned, right? So like Amaya mentioned, like she mentioned. So these would be amazing to have that. And I also want to understand what role will Google play when Metaverse comes into being, with decentralized systems coming to place. How will that affect, first-party data? So just like a little idea about it, that would be great.
Do you want to take that?
I'm not prepared on the metaverse. Probably next time.
Yes,
But
for next time.
I absolutely. And the use case, I completely take that feedback. Make it more relatable. We tried the demo today for the first time. We've never shown that. We said, let's go and show that because it's more relatable. But we'll take that as a good feedback.
Yes.
We build on that.
Like you mentioned, the English behind the
Correct.
data is what makes it interesting
Yeah,
for marketers.
for sure.
That's how you keep us hooked.
Yeah.
Thank
So I think especially if you're, obviously the data has a lot more, I spend a little bit of time with Kunal doing, what if I want to find out this? I always find it very interesting that if you're the marketer, once you have the dashboards, you can say, okay, now show me with Levi's if I wanted to go with X and Y. So I would encourage you, if you have some time after this, come talk to Kunal and I, specifically push the model a little bit further and say, how do I see this? Because I think the demo actually is it's a living, breathing demo. You can kind of see different ways. I would also encourage you to, we don't have a sign up or anything, but reach out to us to see whether you want to actually work with some real data of your own. There's nothing that makes a real use case on a model than your own test data. I found that it doesn't have to be, full enterprise data. It can be sample data. It actually helps bring it to life for your users. And I know Kunal does that regularly. But, work with your own sample data. Like one test that I'm going to be doing with him is my this year's events data, because we just opened up to face-to-face events. Trying to actually go back, we spent so much more money on events than we had done, obviously, during COVID. How do we actually take that audience and actually build customer journeys with that? So if I want to follow up with them on digital, how do I do it, right? So find your own use case, find your own data, and then push the models to actually give you some sample data is what I would say as well. Because no one else's use case is your use case, right? Everybody's got their own, nobody's going to share their first-party data with you, so you'll never really see real data in a demo. Cool. Thank you so much for being here. Let me turn it back to, I'll get that to, okay, great. Thanks. Okay, great.
Thank you so much. I think before I officially conclude, I would want all of y'all to clap for them. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. Honestly, thank you so much for your time. It was a great workshop. I think data for us is also very important because we come back from the event side ourselves. I think y'all are here, majority of y'all, because of the data that we have, and then obviously the way we target to y'all. We would love if y'all could take up a minute. There is a QR code on all of your tables. If y'all could sign that up, it would help you all get the certificates for this session. Furthermore, whatever sessions we do with Google Cloud on whatever your expectations are, we will furthermore send communications on that. And we obviously have an official giveaway that we were going to do for the workshop. So I think Ankita and Rennie will start proceeding post that. So if you all could scan that and do that, it would be great. I would love to take the moment to thank Virginia and Kunal for the incredible session. I think it did help a lot of y'all. It did give a lot of insights. It's very educative. So thank you so much for that. Obviously, I have to take this time to thank my sponsors. Otherwise, they will kill me. So IMI in association, IMI with WebEngage presents the 18 Marketing Conclave in association with our innovation partner, Zapads. Our platinum partner, Bobble AI. Our gold partner, AsiaNet News. Our silver partner, Google Cloud. Art Workflows by Bazingo, Times Internet, Mfliterate. I would also like to thank our supporters. I would like to thank Brandwork. I would like to thank our knowledge partner, Deloitte, and our conversational partner, Value First. Thank you so much, everybody. We have parallel sessions going on in track A, B, and D. You all can always go sit there, and we'll very soon start with lunch as well. So please enjoy your time. Converse with people. I think this is the best way to network, and we'll see you all at the next event in furthermore time here. Thank you.